We're going to go to the United States because Aretha Franklin's funeral, wow, what can you say about that? Musicians, politicians are saying goodbye to the First Lady of Soul. 100 pink Cadillacs, a gold-plated coffin, 3 presidential tributes, and eulogies by more than a dozen preachers: Stevie Wonder, Jennifer Hudson, Ariana Grande, Chaka Khan, and more. Simon Marks, LBC's US correspondent, brings us the latest. Simon, evening to you.
Hello, Andrew. You've just joined me a little bit late because I was hoping to bring you an extraordinary musical performance that has just wrapped up with Yolanda Adams and a bishop, Paul Morton, who were just really sort of imbuing this funeral of Aretha Franklin that has now been going on for longer than 5 hours.
Wow.
With amazing gospel spirit. But let me take you there live now. Speaking to the assembled mourners, they're really celebrating Aretha Franklin's life, is a radio host in Detroit by the name of Mildred Gattis. She's just stepped up to the podium. Let's have a listen in.
The same. Aretha Franklin was more than a melody. She was born at a time when the world was an unsure and an unsafe place for a woman. Hello, world. Meet Aretha Louise Franklin. She was talented, she was fierce, and she stepped to the beat of her own drum.
Mildred Gattis. She's a radio host in Aretha Franklin's beloved Detroit. This funeral is beginning to wrap up. It has been going on, as I say, for over 5 hours now, and it has been absolutely an astonishing tribute to the singer that America has been mourning since her death several years ago. I can bring you a little bit of the music that we heard earlier on today. Here's a bit of Smokey Robinson paying his tribute.
I miss you, my friend. I know that my love for you will never end.
Smokey Robinson doing what only Smokey Robinson can do. The mourners have also been addressed by an array of people gathered there, including the Reverend Jesse Jackson. There was an amazing sermon by the Reverend Al Sharpton and the former President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
That the secret of her greatness was she took this massive talent and this perfect culture that raised her and decided to be the composer of her own life song. What a song it turned out to be.
And you were mentioning there the 100 pink Cadillacs that are lined up outside the church where all this is taking place in Detroit. There's also been considerable interest, Andrew, in the fact that over the last few days, as Aretha Franklin's body has lain in repose in Detroit, the costumes that she's wearing have changed 3 times as she has been prepared for burial today, something that Bill Clinton made a comment about as well. Take a listen.
I was so glad when I got here, and I hope you will forgive me, when the casket was still open, because I said, I wonder what my friends got on today.
And what she has got on today is a gold dress in which she will be buried once this funeral is over. A real celebration of her life, reflective of the musical start that she got in her father's gospel church there in Detroit, but absolutely, and you could hear it there, redolent of the contributions that she made, not just musically to the United States, but culturally, socially, and politically as well, by contributing so much to the standing of women in American society and also, of course, the standing of African Americans. All of that being celebrated in Detroit over multiple hours today.
I can't recall, Simon, correct me if you, or remind me if I've forgotten something. Has there been a funeral quite like this before in America for a singer, actor, celebrity, whatever you want to call it? I mean, she was the First Lady of Soul for sure. But, I mean, 6 hours and to have so many leading figures from the world of entertainment paying homage to her.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly remarkable. I'm sort of thinking back to the funerals of Michael Jackson and Prince as well, where music, of course, played a central role. But they've been absolutely determined, Andrew, that this is going to be, as they've put it, a celebration fit for the Queen. That's what the signs say, hanging all around the venue where this is taking place in Detroit. And, an array of stars who are on hand to pay tribute to Aretha Franklin, including Faith Hill. We've heard from Ariana Grande, Smokey Robinson, as I was saying, Stevie Wonder, and many others. So it's just been imbued with an extraordinary sense of music and spirit and soul.
And across the United States to Washington, Senator John McCain lying in state on Capitol Hill, the great and the good paying their respects. He was a hugely popular politician, Simon. I know he failed to become the President of the United States, but there's huge respect for him.
Yeah, I mean, failed to become the President of the United States, but you almost wouldn't know that from the ceremonies that took place up on Capitol Hill within the last few hours and the weekend that lies ahead. Remember that there's going to be a memorial service for Senator McCain tomorrow at National Cathedral here in Washington, D.C. That will be addressed by two men who defeated him politically, former President Barack Obama and former President George W. Bush, who, of course, secured the Republican presidential nomination when John McCain was trying the first time around. Very poignant decision that was made by John McCain himself to invite those two men to eulogize him, as the senator posthumously sends a message to the American people that he believes that his type of politics, where you reach out across the aisle and engage in consensus with your political opponents, finding solutions to problems when you can find them, he's essentially arguing posthumously that that is a far superior way of doing things than the way that currently exists in Washington, D.C., championed by the polarizing, slashing and burning approach of President Trump. President Trump, of course, was not there to honor John McCain in the rotunda of the Capitol earlier today. He left the job to his Vice President, Mike Pence.
We gather here today to honor an American patriot, served a cause greater than himself. And we gather here remembering a man who knew how he wanted to be remembered. On behalf of a grateful nation, we will ever remember that John McCain served his country, and John McCain served his country honorably.
The Vice President of the United States saying words that President Trump struggled to articulate earlier in the week and is not welcome to articulate publicly during any of these ceremonies, honouring John McCain's contribution to the country. And it has to be said that when Mike Pence finished those remarks and he walked down the row of family members of John McCain to offer condolences and shake them by the hand, they could barely look him in the eye. And particularly in the face of John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, who had been very outspoken in her defence of her father as he came under a repeated attack by Donald Trump in the final months of his life. You could tell that there was absolutely no love lost between the family and this presidency.
And I never can forget during the presidential campaign, I think it was, Simon, that Trump actually imbued he challenged John McCain's record as a war hero, saying he just got captured. I prefer my war heroes who weren't captured. A deeply, deeply offensive thing to say from a man who's never worn a military uniform.
Absolutely. And John McCain recoiled at that, and his family recoiled at that. You'll remember that was in, I think, late 2015 when then candidate Donald Trump said he's not a war hero. He's only a war hero because he got captured. I prefer my heroes when they're not captured. This coming from a man who managed to secure a military deferment so that he wouldn't have to fight in Vietnam. Speaking of another man who served 5 years in what he referred to as the Hanoi Hilton, where he was tortured by the Vietnamese, and things got worse because there was one moment when President Trump failed with alacrity to fire a White House staffer who had joked in a staff meeting about the fact that John McCain was dying of brain cancer. Ultimately, the staffer resigned and left the White House, but all of that has left the McCain family, I think, feeling like they want absolutely nothing to do with this president following John McCain's death, in the same way, frankly, as John McCain didn't want very much to do with him when he was alive.
All right, thanks for that. That's Simon Marks, LBC's US correspondent, bringing you the latest from the extraordinary funeral tributes to Aretha Franklin. What a magnificent singer she was. Even if you didn't like the film The Blues Brothers, that remarkable scene when there she is in her grubby pinny and she sings her song, My Word, that I will never forget the Blues Brothers film just for that alone. Fantastic singer, and of course also the tributes to John McCain. Extraordinary, isn't it, that the President of the United States not welcome at a funeral from a fellow member of the Republican Party. My word, doesn't Donald Trump polarise opinion?